and a Golden Angel Award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends, my lovely audience. Welcome to the East-West Show that is exclusively sponsored by Wolfers. Wolfers, the Belgian royal family designated brand of jewelries with 400 years of glorious history and hand-forged by 10 generations of master craftsmen. That stands for a testimony to the spectacular and the share of the royal glory. Wolfers, the artistic grade jewelries. So, welcome to the show. With me today is my good friend, Mr. Ron Stein. He is the founder and an ambassador of energy and the infrastructure of California. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jack.
All right, very good. When Marianne told me that you were coming, I get a little excited. Because I've been bothered by the questions that I have. I believe whatever questions I have are the questions that my voters, my audiences are having. The same thing. I may say that one way or the other, I represent them. Talking about looking at the name of your organization, energy and the infrastructure, I thought finally I got the right guy talking about the right thing, right?
That's right.
So, where do you want to start? About California energy and infrastructure, this is a big thing.
It's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
California is an energy island. You have to start with that concept. We are separated from the rest of the United States because we've got the Sierra Mountains separating us from the rest of the country. So you've heard of the United States being a net exporter of oil. That's true for 49 states. Does not apply to California.
Mm-hmm.
California is separated by the Sierra Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So all that excess oil in the United States, the only way to get it to California is to send it through the Panama Canal, which is too expensive. So they import it from foreign countries. And California, the motivation is we're trying to be green.
Mm-hmm.
And the production in California has been going down for the last couple of decades. Imports from Alaska have been going down for the last couple of decades. And as a result, we import more and more from foreign countries.
Mm-hmm.
We used to import 5% of our oil in 1992. Today we're importing 57%. What that equates to in dollars?
We used to do how many percent?
5%.
5%.
Yeah. Between California
on
production
import,
and imports from Alaska.
now 57.
Now it's 57. What that means in dollars, we are sending $60 million a day, a day.
$60 million a day.
To oil-rich foreign countries.
To foreign suppliers.
Most of which don't like us.
Most with who?
Don't like us.
Of course.
We're sending it to Saudi Arabia.
Of course not.
And that is constantly going up. So that attributes to, like I say, our supply of oil is very limited. And we have a captive audience.
We have plenty of time, Ron.
Okay.
All right. And now finally, when I got hold of you, I must have squeezed the juice, all the juice out of you to get to the answer to my question, right? Okay, now, you mentioned that California used to rely on the import by only 5%.
Right.
And now we jump to 10 times multiplied from that point to 57%. Okay. What is the legit reason to do so?
Jack, there is no legit reason. The only legit reason is the lawmakers make the position we're not going to drill in California.
Now, why? Why? We have to have, and as taxpayers, I believe that we deserve to ask a question, right?
They take the environmental position. They do not want to drill. Environmentalists help finance campaigns to get these people elected, and they support it by not drilling. The frustrating part is California is sitting on the largest oil reserves in America.
Yes, we are.
And bear in mind, a lot of that's offshore, but most of the offshore oil's within 7 miles of shore. And with today's technology, they slant drill to gas.
Yes.
So if we drill, there will be no offshore drilling. And we'd be able to keep that $60 million a day in state, provide jobs, careers, opportunities.
I learned a long time ago a beautiful proverb from a friend of mine who is also a guest of this show.
Okay?
It says that if you cannot find the answer, follow the money. Right? It looks that I can't find the answer, so I have to follow the money. So compare drilling in California, vertical or slanting, right?
Right.
To import, where the money lies, where the money issue lies.
Well, it's interesting that and Putin of Russia knows this. He who controls, the country that controls oil and natural gas, controls the world.
Yeah. All right. Good.
And
Good.
I'm just awestruck that California is so hardcore that we're not going to drill, sitting on the largest reserves in America, and we won't drill for it.
Yeah, of course. From a perspective for our posterity, right, for the benefit of them, I have no problem. All right. If it gets to a point, the money gets a little dirtier, though, I do have a question to ask.
Okay.
Right? Now, you're saying that whoever controls the oil and natural gas controls the world. Why are we stretch our neck to foreign suppliers that we have to suffer?
Jack, that's a question I keep asking. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. All right. Good. And that means I'm asking the right person.
Okay. Now, when you get down to, let's talk transportation fuels. California is the 5th largest economy in the world. We're consuming a lot of fuel every day. We consume 13 million gallons of aviation fuel every day. 10 million gallons of diesel fuel every day. 42 million gallons of gasoline every day. Now that sounds like a lot of fuel, but you got 35 million registered vehicles.
Well,
And of all that fuel is all manufactured in state, in the most environmentally controlled location in the world. And we are captive. And anything the lawmakers want to put on the price of gasoline, it goes to the posted price.
okay, a little bit. Just hang on there a little bit.
Okay?
I'm kind of like very demanding, and I insist on something, right? Okay. Now, when you talk about environmental control, of course, there's the pollution to talk about.
Right.
Is the pollution more on the consuming side or on the drilling side?
Consuming side.
Consuming side. Okay, now, with these numbers of consumption on a day-to-day basis, that's where the pollution comes from. Right?
Yes.
It matters much less where these oil come from.
Correct.
By drilling or by
Importing.
Importing.
Right.
Right. Okay, good. My question's answered. And I'm getting to it. You find it?
Yep.
You feel about it? I'm getting to it. Why we pick up a harder way?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
The fuel that we're consuming is, like I say, it's manufactured in state, and we have a captive audience. And
These are manufacturers in the States
yes,
with a foreign crude.
yes.
Okay, very good. Mhm.
There's 12 refineries in California that produce our fuel.
12 refineries.
And if any one of them happens to be down for maintenance, God forbid a fire or other problems, then you have less than 12.
All right.
Then you get supply and demand. Then you get a spike. Anytime you see on the news a refinery fire or you hear about a turnaround going on, price of fuel goes up. That's supply and demand.
All right.
But the main concern I have is all the prices that are posted, they're dumped on the posted price. When you see that posted price, that includes everything: state tax, federal tax, excise tax, a bunch of environmental regulations, cap and trade. By the way, cap and trade helped pay for the choo-choo train.
All right, very good, very good, good. Okay, my dear friends, with Ron, I probably seem to get some answers from the questions that have been bothering me for a long time. Mr. Ron Stein, a professional and engineer, is the founder and the CEO of an organization, and the ambassador for energy and the infrastructure of California. I'm very thankful to this meeting because it looks that I'm getting there. I start to feel the kind of the cow I'm talking about, so to get the whole thing, right? So let's take a short moment now. We come back on it.
Everything expected to change. It's like seeing John Wayne.
My name is Paul James. I host the news.
And the Golden Angel Award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends, my lovely audience, ladies and gentlemen, my dear fellow Americans. I better say, my dear fellow Californians, welcome back to the show, East West Show, talking about nothing but the truth, right? Exclusively sponsored by Belgium royal family designated brand of jewelry, that is Wolfers. Wolfers with 400 years of glorious history, hand forged by 10 generations of master craftsmen. That brings us back to the show. With me today is Mr. Ron Stein, a professional engineer, founder and ambassador of Energy for California, Energy and Infrastructure of California. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you for having already semi-answered my questions, because I try to do it in a condensed way, revengefully from whatever this years that accumulated in me. I want to ask all questions I want to ask, right? So now, with these numbers, okay, now the numbers you mentioned, right? We used to rely on import of gasoline, the foreign oil, by 5%. When you say we used, what years you're talking about?
92.
92.
Yeah.
1992. Okay, now. And now we're relying 57% upon foreign oil. And what year you're talking about now?
2018.
2018.
Yes.
All right. Okay, very good. All right. Now, we consume on a daily basis 60 million gallons of gasoline.
Correct.
All right. And 65 million gallons,
Correct.
right? And then of which 13 million gallons for aviation, 10 million gallons for diesel, and 42 for gasoline, the car we drive.
Correct.
Right? So all these rely upon 12 refineries in California, which, if any, hauls for maintenance or repair or God forbid, an accident.
Yes.
The price has to hike.
Correct.
Is that right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, now how do you answer the question that, number one, how come when we see price hike, when there's no accident, when there's no reported maintenance, how do you do that?
Well, it's affected by the price of crude oil. And crude oil is a international price. And if you saw there was ships attacked by Iran over in Saudi Arabia, who knows? Those might have been crude oil ships destined for California. That makes people nervous. Price of crude jumps up. The price of crude is 50 to 70% of the price of gasoline. It's a major piece of the price of
All right.
gasoline.
Okay, of course. Previously we asked question we asked already. From 5% to 57%, though, we jump for higher price,
Yes.
right? Because the cost for drilling is much less expensive,
Yes.
right? And we confirmed also another point that most of the pollution come from consuming, not drilling itself.
Correct.
All right, we use the most polluting way and we pay higher cost to get import, and the import by which we stretch our neck to the international price level, price fluctuation. Am I right?
That's correct.
Okay, another question. When we waged the Iraq War, when we failed to find these massive destructive weapons, we changed the title of the statue of the war to "We Fight for Oil." We fight for oil, right? From that point on, right? Look at the price now. Is our oil cheaper?
Well, oil it's an international commodity. And
I mean gasoline. Take gasoline for example.
well, gasoline is a manufactured product.
Is our gasoline cheaper? No.
Well, the price we pay for gasoline? Well, last year in 2018, Senator John Moorlach from Orange County sponsored a bill for me because, as you know, Californians pay an extra $1 a gallon for fuel. And I told the senator it should be transparent to the public where all that money's going, because when you buy clothes, computers, a car, it's price plus tax, except fuel. The price you see is a dumping ground for state tax, federal tax, excise tax, low carbon fuel standard, cap and trade, and a bunch of other environmental regulations. And so the bill was proposed, put before the Assembly, and it was built SB 1074, and it called for transparency. When you go to the pump, you can see where all those numbers are. And so, to my shock and amazement, the senator and I were testifying in Sacramento, and Senator Josh Newman, at the time, he was basically under recall at that time. He was adamant. He led most of the discussion of this committee, and he was adamant he did not want the public to know those details. Killed the bill. And during the testimony, he asked me a question. And so I made a mistake. I says, "Mr. Newman," and he pulled the microphone to his face. He says, "That's Senator Newman." So I bit my tongue, and I said to myself, "Not for long, because you're under recall." Then I answered the question. And he was recalled a month later.
Sure. He was successfully removed out of the Senate seat, though. And Ron, I appreciate it very much that you mentioned the Newman, the Newman story, and also the recall, right? And behind the Newman and recall, or simultaneously with the Newman and recall, there goes Proposition 6.
Yes.
Right, which talks exactly about the gasoline price increase. Gasoline tax increase.
Yes.
Gasoline tax increase. Right now, and then for almost a year, all the through the signature campaign and everything, everybody knew that the Proposition 6 has to be denied.
Yes.
And how come finally it was proven by the taxpayers?
Fear, scare tactics, for one. It was based on, the infrastructure. If you don't approve it, the infrastructure is going to fall apart. This money's supposed to go for infrastructure. And the way the proposition was worded, I think most people were confused. If you voted against it, that was voting for it, and voting for it was against it. People were confused about how they're supposed to vote, what it really meant. But the bottom line is, most recently, the Attorney General is asking for an investigation about pricing.
They're in charge of a text.
And now the governor wants an investigation. And it's their own party that doesn't want the public to know the details. All they got to do is get Senator John Moorlach, reinstate SB 1074, and have the governor sign it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's the precise point. Okay. Something they do not want us to know. And for that, they lie to us. And the technicality of lying is they use a mystifying language to describe the bill.
Yes.
I still recall. And I recall even that I have done at least 10 shows talking about the language, right? So, and instead of saying that this is the price gasoline increase, they ask you, do you want to cut off the money for infrastructure repair? Of course no. And then that gets the bill approved.
Yes.
So that's dirty.
Yeah.
That's dirty.
Jack, when the bill came up originally, Josh Newman was a key vote to get it passed first time. And I took the position, we're already paying an extra $1 a gallon. We should already have the greatest infrastructure in the world.
Yeah, already.
And then they're going to designate this 12 cents just for infrastructure. It's crazy because
We don't
all
see
the
anything,
all the
yes.
pet projects. The cap and trade, a lot of those funds went to the choo-choo train.
On one hand, we see the gasoline tax going higher and higher and higher, up and up and up. On the other, by the way, every time when they say that, they push that, they say we do it for infrastructure.
Yes.
Right? And on the contrary, we see the infrastructure deteriorating, going down day by day.
Yes.
And in between, there must be something, I would say, strictly, deeply hidden into it. All right? The fact that the taxpayers, what we want is so open, so obviously known. Josh Newman's downfall indicates how much we want it. And yet, they're still covering it. So the dirty politics, I really want to go into it.
Okay.
All right. Let's take another short moment now. We come back. We want to find out why they lie to us. Right? Why they use us as if a dumping ground. Everything can be dumped onto our shoulders.
Yes.
Right? So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Everything is expected and straight. It's like it seems on
My
ways.
name is Paul James. I host English News.
And a golden angel award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends, my lovely audiences, my dear fellow Californians. Welcome back to the East-West Show, a show talking about right from wrong, a show talking about truth, nothing but the naked truth. Exclusively sponsored by Wolfers, the Belgian royal family designated brand of jewelry that stands for 400 years of glorious history and 10 generations of the master craftsman. All right, so that leads us to the show today. Today, with me is my dear friend, Mr. Ron Stein. Mr. Ron Stein is the founder and ambassador of energy and the infrastructure of California. It's interesting. If you put the words energy to go versus something else, though, I don't feel anything. But especially when it is go hand in hand with the infrastructure, you can't help laughing. Why? Because they are, in California, at least in California, they are contradictory to each other. Am I right? Reading your organization name?
Yes.
Okay. And we were at the point that we're being lied upon. We're being used as a dumping ground. Everything they want to dump, they dump it on our shoulders, right? The question is, why are we treated that way?
Well, as I mentioned, we're paying an extra $1 a gallon. That has contributed to California having the highest poverty in California, the highest poverty in the United States, highest homeless rate in the United States, highest welfare rate in the United States, because 95% of the people that own those vehicles, only 5% are electric vehicles. The 95% are using this manufactured fuel, and they're captive. And they need that for school, for work, for shopping. And it's interesting that they're the ones that are basically paying to help fund all the pet projects up in California.
There's one day we are doing a show. I'm doing a show with a friend of mine. We're talking about we have the highest gasoline price, we have the highest housing price, we have everything. And then my guest just interrupted me. how about we say everything to the extreme? Good or bad?
Well, Jack, one of the motivations about having high fuel prices, it's an incentive for people to buy the electric vehicle, most of which people can't afford.
All right, of course.
And so, like I say, they're trying to increase the electric vehicle numbers, and higher fuels is one of the tools they have. And so they'll just use it as a dumping ground. Now, two of the regulations on fuel right now is the cap and trade and the low carbon fuel standard. Both those standards are just beginning to kick into high gear. When I mean kick into high gear, they want carbon intensity to get lower and lower and lower as the years go on. Those two regulations, in the coming years, those two regulations will probably add another $1 or $2 to the price of fuel. Just those two. And who's going to pay for it? The working class.
I know. Let's do analysis. Do some analysis, right?
Okay.
Okay. Now, number one, is the push for electric cars really or 100% for environmental control or for interest group?
I think the politicians, the AQMD, the governor, they're pushing it for the environment. Now, if you have to understand, of all the EVs in the entire country, 50% of all the EVs in the entire country are right here in California. Rest of the country doesn't care about EVs.
California takes the heat, takes a hit, right?
Yes.
So that's not a question because we are the biggest vehicle users state,
Yes.
right? Okay, now, even for California though, I'm trying to find out, in the political move, is there any interest group, a group interest involved, right? So now on one hand, they are trying to push the electrical vehicles, right?
Correct.
And then they make the price unpayable, unaffordable.
Correct.
Right? Why do they do that? Government talking about all kinds of incentives to help with, such as solar cells
Yes.
over the roof, right? Such as anything lower energy, even bulbs, with a government supplement. Why wouldn't the government supplement with the electrical cars?
Well, they are providing subsidies to buy electric vehicles. Electric vehicles happen to be very expensive to make.
Subsidies, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, they happen to be very expensive to make. And, the battery, like a Tesla, the battery in a Tesla weighs 1,200 pounds. 1,200 pounds. And it's made with lithium and cobalt to make a lithium ion battery. And most of that lithium and cobalt is coming from Africa, South America, and China. Mined by hand. Many of it is mined by kids. No labor regulations, no environmental regulations, and there's no transparency to the public. Anytime I see a Tesla, I personally want to walk up to it and put a sticker on it. I've got a dirty battery, because that battery came from kids mining lithium and cobalt in other countries. But it's very expensive.
Right. In other words, we want to keep our records straight for environmental control. We never mind who everybody else, in order to make our record straight, has polluted there. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So now, question: the government has put no supplement to help with the price of the electrical cars.
I mean subsidies?
Yeah, and also the battery, the source of the battery is an additional pollution.
Yes.
Right. In other words, from energy point of view, the electrical vehicle is not a direction for a human being to go.
I personally wouldn't have one.
Okay, very good. All right, very good. That makes a lot of sense.
Because electric vehicles, Teslas have the biggest range. You got the biggest battery. If you get 200 or 300 mile range, The good news is they got quick, fast charging, so you can get within 40 minutes, you get about 80% of your charge. So you can get 150, maybe up to 200 miles range in 40 minutes. The bad news is if you're at Costco and you're 10th in line, you've got a 5-hour wait to plug in to get it charged.
Well, nowadays you're still talking about a kind of accoutrement for electrical cars,
Yes.
right? It's not a necessity for your transportation.
Personally, I think most people have electric vehicles. That's a second car, not their primary car. And when you take a look at the general population, most people can barely afford the cars they have. Now you want them to buy another car?
Yeah, of course. And
Electric
in other words, whatever you say, I don't have the money for that car.
They're very
That's
expensive.
the answer to
Yes.
it, right? What you're doing are okay with me, but I don't have no money for the car.
Right.
So that's it,
Yes.
right? They increase the tax on and on and on and on to make me feel the fear of going broke because the higher price.
Right.
And I know the fear is there because I don't have, but I'm sorry, I don't have the money. So?
Yes. I joke with people that the only place you see a Tesla is in Silicon Valley and Newport Beach. Other than that, they're hard to find.
Yeah, and also there's the one up there in space.
Yes.
Yeah, there's one, right?
Yes.
There's anyway. All right. Okay, very good. So these things together makes the whole thing even more mystifying, right? That we are being used as a dumping ground for anything they want to dump.
Right.
All right. Good.
Let me talk about electricity. Because California, we shut down San Onofre. Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant's coming down in a few years. Mayor Garcetti has announced he's closing 3 natural gas power plants because they're fossil fuels. He's getting ready for renewables. And renewables, wind and solar, take a lot of land. San Bernardino had a 1 million-acre solar farm proposed in their backyard. City council voted unanimously. Not in our backyard. Killed it. And so the renewables are not being built, can't find enough land for them. And so constantly there's not enough renewables to cover the loss of the nuclear plant generation and the Diablo Canyon and the natural gas that's going to be coming out of service. And California cannot produce enough electricity. Well, the good news is there's no brownouts. The bad news is we're importing it from other states. And it's costing us electricity. And so the public is paying 50% more for electricity than the national average. Commercial is paying double the national average for electricity because we have to import it because we can't make it here. And it's
I see. So we're paying 50% more for residential.
Correct.
For residential electricity.
And double for commercial.
Then the average of the nation, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, the industrial, they pay 200%.
100%. It's double the price.
100%.
Yeah. Double
Right,
the
okay.
price of national.
100% for industrial.
Right.
All right. So now, obviously, there is a pressure here.
Now,
right?
can I talk about electricity for a second? Because everybody wants them to go solar panels, become independent of the utility companies. Well, that's the good news. The bad news is the more solar is, the less revenue the utility companies have to maintain the grid, to invest in equipment, smart grids, et cetera. And in addition to reducing the revenue from the utility companies, and they have to have enough revenue to cover fires and that type of thing. And then you got the EVs that have to put charging requirements on the grid that the utility companies are having a hard time getting money to support. And
That's why they are raising their price.
Exactly.
All right. Okay, my friend, let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
Everything expected. It's like seems wrong ways.
My name is Paul James. I host this news every morning.
Hello, dear friends, my lovely audience, and welcome back to the show. Jack Chow on the East West, that is exclusively sponsored by Walford, the Belgium royal family designated brand of jewelry that stands for 400 years of history and 10 generations of hand-forged craftsmanship. Bring us back to the show, though. With me today is one of the sober-minded people.
Okay.
One of the hard-to-find, sober-minded human being who leads an organization called Energy and the Infrastructure of California. Hilariously, when you put the word energy together or go hand in hand with the infrastructure, you find California is almost a joke. We pay highest price for energy. We pay highest price for energy tax, and yet we're seeing the worst to the worst, right? Infrastructure. Why are we seeing what we see?
The Green New Deal that you've probably read about is basically talking about the world's going to run on electricity alone. Going to have a super grid that's going to run electricity. Well, if you do that, you're going to basically have to get rid of the military, get rid of the airlines, get rid of the cruise ships, get rid of the merchant ships, because they all run on fossil fuels. And everybody's so focused on green, the world cannot run on electricity alone, especially on intermittent electricity. Because wind produces electricity when the wind's blowing, and solar produces electricity when the sun's shining. If the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing, you got nothing. Well, there aren't any solar airlines. I don't think American Airlines has a solar plane yet. And the cruise ships, it's nice to go on a cruise ship. They got water slides and zip lines and all this entertainment. They're huge. Those cruise ships are burning 80,000 gallons of fuel a day.
But on one hand, well, of course, on the other hand, we're talking about you can't simply operate human activities 100% on electricity.
That's correct.
All right? So you fly an airplane that covers a range of 13,000 miles. You do it on electricity. Who dares to fly that kind of airplane?
No.
What if a short circuit, right?
Well, the interesting thing, Jack, is granted, airlines, cruise ships, merchant ships, everything is run on fossil
tanks. Electrical tanks?
Well, the military is 100% oil.
100% fossil fuel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So fossil fuels cannot be totally replaced.
No.
Right. Okay, good. All right. So do we have any number of total consumption of oil or gasoline or diesel in the area of military?
No, the military, they keep that secret.
They keep it secret.
Yeah.
I see.
I do know airlines.
But huge.
Yeah. Airlines internationally, all the airlines throughout the world, they're consuming 225 million.
So airlines, 13 million gallons per day.
Internationally.
Oh, internationally.
225 million gallons.
Oh, this 225 million gallons
a day.
Internationally.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
There's a lot of international airports.
All right, good, got it. All right. So, and that's an industry that you cannot stop, and you cannot replace with electrical whatsoever.
Commerce is transportation.
All right.
Without transportation, you have no commerce.
Uh-huh.
But the interesting thing about the fossil fuels is, we can talk about the numbers of airlines and cars and diesel.
All right, okay.
But the main thing that really comes out of oil is the thousands and thousands of products that come from the byproducts from oil. Everything in your office here, your iPhones, the pieces of the cars. Electric cars are made with oil.
Yeah, of course.
And they get their energy.
You're talking about the body, the paint.
They get their energy from oil.
Yeah.
Germany did a study And their study was EVs. They looked at a 10-year life cycle of an EV battery, 10-year life cycle of a Tesla, and they calculated that Tesla would basically produce more emissions over 10 years than a diesel-driven German car. Now, the basis was they take a look at the mining. Mining for lithium and cobalt is huge. I mean, it's an environmental disaster. And with no environmental controls, emissions are huge.
If somebody does
they spread that out over 10
Yeah.
years, and then to charge the car, they say an electric vehicle is green because it has no tailpipe. Well, that's because the tailpipe is at the power plant that's providing the power to energize the car.
Yeah.
And so you take the emissions of the power plant over 10 years and the mining emissions over 10 years.
By that, I will say that I believe if somebody did some study, they would probably find out for a physical electrical car, though, how big is the percentage they find out in the parts that come from gasoline, petroleum oil originally.
100%.
100%.
100% of the car is made with petroleum products.
And the tires and everything.
Plastics, tires, asphalt, everything.
And the paint, right? Okay,
Yes.
now, we really have to give infrastructure some time.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about infrastructure.
Okay.
I know that we have tons of subjects talking about energy, though. To give it a fair trade about the infrastructure, what's wrong with our infrastructure? Because nobody seems to care about infrastructure.
Well, the money gets diverted. The general fund is a lot of pet projects come out of that. As I mentioned, the cap and trade. One of the 20 projects gets funded was the choo-choo train. Well, as you know, the choo-choo train has gone away, and the funds have kind of disappeared. They're going to other projects.
And now you're talking about high-speed train.
The high-speed rail, yes.
High-speed rail, all right?
I call that the choo-choo train.
Choo-choo train, okay, now. Okay, and what? And right now there's a talk about pause that project, right?
Yes.
I mean, to discontinue, but the money has spent,
Yes.
right? So what are they going to do with the remainder of the project, though?
Governor Newsom can answer that one.
And what was he? Does he have a plan to do anything?
He's pretty evasive. Like I say, there's a lot of money that goes into the general fund. Like I say, these, this extra buck that we're paying for fuel, that's an extra buck a gallon for you consuming, more than 60 million gallons. That's like $60 million a day going into the general fund.
All right. Suppose the speed rail can be stopped, right? Yeah. Which looks like stopping now.
Yes.
Right. How about potholes? How about broken bridges? How about the zigzagging freeways? How about the bumpy driving conditions? Are we doing anything, or is anybody putting their hands on in doing anything?
Well,
as far as California is concerned.
I will give credit to the American Society of Civil Engineers. They did an infrastructure report card, for California, for every state, and roll it up to a national report card. And I think California's report card came in at, I think it was D+ or C- for infrastructure. And they look at, airports, roads, schools, bridges, everything.
Everything, yes. Everything.
And it needs funding.
I remember when I first came, that was almost 38 years ago, 36, 38 years ago. And I was so surprised by the freeway conditions.
Yes.
I vividly remembered I wrote to my friend back home saying that here, driving, you easily fall asleep because you feel nothing, you heard nothing, like that, right?
Yes.
Okay, now we're doing we're doing bumpy cars. It wasn't until the other day I was driving on I-5 going south. To a certain section of I-5, I felt the same feeling because that surface was so smooth, so newly paved. So anybody doing anything to restore California freeway back to their old days?
Well, I know Orange County, they invest a lot of money into the freeways. And you get to the LA line, LA invests a lot into rail.
No,
green
it has
lanes,
to be,
blue lanes.
has to be county money and the state money combined, right?
Yeah, but Orange County put a lot of it into the freeways. Because as soon as you drive from LA and you pass into Orange County, totally different freeway system. It's wide open. Now the problem with the freeways is the number of cars. Because, they haven't built any more freeways in decades. They're trying to improve, efficiencies, adding carpool lanes, but they're really not adding any new freeways. The problem is every year we keep adding more cars to the freeway. And it gets to the point, the old comical thing, how many marbles can you put in the same jar?
Yeah.
Right now I think worldwide there's like 1 billion registered vehicles. And I think by 2040 it might grow to 2.5 billion.
Of cars.
Of cars.
Of cars.
And so you can have more cars every year. Everybody wants new car sales. It's great. Well, those cars wind up on the freeway, and if it's crowded now and you add more cars, it's going to be.
By logic, with the tendency of the car increasing total numbers, you have to have an increased plan or more condensed plan to do the road repair,
Yes.
right? They go parallel.
Yes.
And on one hand, you have the number increasing. On the other, you move the money and reallocate it to something else, to toy trains, to whatever. So of course you see a trouble,
Right.
right?
I think logistically, I've talked to the American Society of Civil Engineers, and I said, you guys, what we really need to do is find a way to get cars off the road. Because we've got great freeways. If you're there at the right time, they're fantastic. But when everybody jumps on the freeway at the same time,
It's free. It's free to dream, but to get everything out of the freeway is really a dream.
Yes.
Right? Okay, now, and I have only 1 minute left. Though, give me an overall picture of about energy and infrastructure, please. Your organization. Yeah.
like I say, we try and educate, trying to provide energy literacy to the public, because there's so many facets of the energy sector. You got the Green New Deal, and you got basically transportation, which is needed for commerce, and those two have to go together. You can't go back to the horse and buggy days, and so we're trying to provide energy literacy, and part of it is being transparent. If the public's, especially California, we're paying an extra $1 a gallon. Let Senator Morlock get him reinstate that SB 1074, and if Governor Newsom, wants to, be transparent to the public, have him sign it. That'll be one step in the right direction, so the public knows, what they're paying for, and if they don't like what they're paying for, hey, go to the polls and change.
All right. Okay. Well, it looks that the time flies too fast. One show is never enough. We haven't touched even half of it. So infrastructure, we just touch it, and so it looks that we need another time. You want to do it another time?
That sounds very good to me.
Yeah, I believe that we can do it as early as next week.
That'd be fine.
All right?
Very
okay,
good.
Deal.
Okay.
All right.
Jack.
All right, we got a deal.
Okay.